work. So I'd like to warmly welcome our Gen Zero and Auckland School Strike group to talk on climate emergency. Welcome everyone. Just grab some of those chairs, that's fine, they're not being used. Right, we're in your hands. The next 5 minutes are all yours.
Kia ora tātou, he uri tēnei no ngai tūhoira ko Te Raroa. Kia ora everyone, I'm Luke Weejohn. I'm one of the organisers of the School Strike for Climate.
I'm Rebecca Kerr and I'm one of the organisers of the School Strike for Climate.
Do you guys want to introduce yourself?
I'm Ali Langenkamp, also an organiser of the School Strike for Climate.
I'm Markel Parkinson, also an organiser.
Just press the, yep.
I'm Sarah Payton.
Oh, we might need to, yeah, we have, the technology of this is somewhat challenging. We probably need a couple of mics off for a mic to go on. Awesome, perfect.
I'm Sarah Payton Beverley and I'm also one of the organisers.
And I'm Gwyneth Paralag.
Yeah. Kia ora.
I'm Sid from Generation Zero.
And my name is Malik from Generation Zero.
Right, over to you.
Well, firstly, I'd like to thank you guys for giving us this opportunity to speak. We're here representing the thousands of kids who took to the streets to demand that you guys declare a climate emergency. But seeing as this meeting's on 9:30 at a Tuesday, not many high schoolers can really come here to send that, so you'll have to see the thousands of kids that stand with us in our message that we support you guys declaring a climate emergency today.
So we as youth, we really want a good, healthy future, and I think that we deserve that as well. And as you can see from the thousands of students that were out on the streets, we think that the first step is that a climate emergency does need to be declared. So as New Zealand's biggest city, this is a really good example that we can set by declaring this emergency. It is the first step to taking action. And I think it's really important that we recognise that we do need to take proper action because climate change is a crisis, it's an emergency, it's going to affect us more and more the less that we do in the years that are coming. So yeah, the youth are really calling for that, and I think it's time that the youth are really listened to.
Yeah, so the School Strike for Climate is this will be the first election. There's a batch of them turning 18 and will be voting at the next election. So that was one thing I wanted to point out. And as more elections come, they'll be aging up and there will be more of a youth presence. I think we've clearly shown this issue is more important to us, not trying to measure who cares more about climate change or anything, but it is more personal when it is our futures that we're talking about here. So yeah, we're going to be keeping on holding you guys accountable at the next elections, in the streets, because it's more than just this emergency, which is the great first step. We need action after that. So ka whawhai tonu mātou, ake, ake, ake.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thanks. And we just want to echo what the school strikers have kind of said. Generation Zero for a really long time has been advocating for the kind of changes we need to see in our city. And we've pushed and we've been pushing for the last 5 years. But now is the time for you all to pull. Declaring the climate emergency gives you a political opportunity, it creates space for you to start saying that significant changes have to take place. And thinking in a way that is about costs and deferring costs into the future, well, that's going to put costs on us in the future, but we're going to make it costly for you now. We're going to make it costly for you now by holding you to account during the local government elections. And the Climate Action Plan is a great first step, but it needs to have actions in it. And we need to see that all of you actually have some skin in the game in this. So by endorsing the plan, by putting it out to consultation, and by actually championing it during your re-election campaigns, that's how you'll show us that you actually mean you're putting actions to your words, and that's the thing that we're going to be watching and paying attention to. So thank you.
Thank you. Malik? No? Okay. Thank you all. There might be a couple of questions. Councillor Simpson.
Kia ora, and thank you for coming in today. I'm not sure your teachers will thank you, but I'm sure we do. Look, my question is around the climate action framework that we've got on the agenda coming up, right? So we're going out to Auckland and asking them what they think about what staff have put together so far. My question is around how can you, through your networks, input into feedback around that, because one of the things that sometimes we struggle with is actually getting people to really respond, and this is a huge issue. I'm absolutely with you on that, but actually what we need as governors for the region is we need the mandate of the people, and we kind of know we have it, but we haven't done anything tangible around that. So how will you, through your networks, is there some way that you can get that climate action framework out there? Because that climate action framework doesn't ask the question, do you believe that we have a climate emergency? Which is something I was quite surprised in seeing. And I think that's a question that, as from our perspective, we need to hear wholeheartedly. Now, we're hearing it from you and we're hearing it from a number of people, and it's my personal view, right? But as a person that's tasked with the decision on behalf of all Aucklanders, I think it's a much more powerful message if we use that tool to get out there, right? So how can you help with that? How can you help with getting people to feedback on the framework itself and to show everybody around here how important, action around climate change is?
I think we've shown, especially with Gen Zero, I think we've shown that we can definitely get people submitting and people gathering on the submission. So we're going to make the effort on making sure that people engage with this process. I completely understand that you feel like you need to hear from a wider range of people about whether it's an emergency, but that might not be the right question to be asking. It might be more important to see what people want to see change, what type of actions that they want to see. That might be the better way to go about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Luke, did you want to comment?
Yeah, we have our whole network and their emails and everything, so we can access all of that. But I don't know if the question, like as you said, should be if we need to branch out and see if people care about climate change enough yet. I think the country has definitely shown that, and we...
You misunderstood me. I think everybody does.
No, I think,
exactly.
I think the question's clear, and I think the answer is clear. I am going to be rigorous around time. I'm going to take Mayor Goff, Councillor Hills, Councillor Darby, quick questions and very quick answers, and then we're going to move on. Mayor Goff.
Kia ora, and thank you for coming to visit me a couple of times too. They were really good meetings, and I appreciate your appearance here today. And I particularly appreciate it, Madam Chair, because long after we've gone, around the year 2100, some of you will still be alive, and your kids and your grandkids. And we understand it's about you. We understand if we defer the costs now, those costs don't get smaller, they get bigger, and the consequences get worse. So we're putting together... We're hopefully passing a climate change emergency today. We're also putting together a framework, which I've referred you to. But a framework's nothing until you have an action plan that's fully costed. And, that's going to be the important task ahead of us. What I'm wanting to hear from you today is just to give us a sense of what you think some of those priority actions need to be.
Well, one of the main things that the council could do, could start by, is trying to make public transport fossil-free and reduce the cost of public transport. That's literally number one. The amount of time that we sit in traffic and waste and congestion, that is your emissions right over there. Starting with that is the main thing to start with.
Thank you.
Good. Any other feedback?
So if you haven't seen, the school strike had 4 main demands which we put out, which were to stop all use of fossil fuels, to have a clean green economy, to
shift away from agriculture to more renewable sources of energy and limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So obviously it's about moving the pressure away from those low-income groups who cannot afford to choose electric vehicles and making it easier, putting the pressure on the big corporations that are contributing to emissions, as well as, yeah, just making the solution not about placing blame, but about moving forward.
Thank you very much.
Right, let's do that then. Yep. Yeah, done. Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora, and just want to say thank you. And yeah, seeing all these young people here today, gets a bit emotional. As the youngest councillor here at 32, I'm way older than most of you already. But I guess my question is, how do we get us, councils across the country, government, everyone, businesses seeing, well, not so much businesses, but I guess the elected people in this country to see further than a 3-year election cycle? Because often, and not always, and I think most of the people around here do their best to look ahead, but often I feel we get sucked into a money thing, but also around just looking for 3 years when you guys are wanting to look 100 years, because you are going to be the most affected by what we don't do, and the cost of doing nothing, as you say, is much higher than the cost of acting. So how do you think we can not only get younger people involved, but also get the politicians to see further than a 3-year election cycle, whether that's government and council? But just want to really thank you for all the work you've all been doing. I think you are really changing the issue and moving it forward, so we can't stop listening.
I think the next few years are the most crucial, though. That 3-year cycle of when you guys are elected, that is the most crucial. We know the next few years we need action to be taken now. So if action is taken in those next 3 years, then those next cycles are going to have the benefits from those actions that are taken. So that's what we're calling for, action now, so that in later, like, we're not calling for action in 10 years, we're calling for it now, so we can have to see the benefits in 10 years. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that was what I meant. I think sometimes people leave things because they're not worried about 10, 20, 30 years away. But yeah.
I think setting the pace now is creating the space for future politicians, elected officials to make that move. So by declaring the emergency and taking bold steps, you're actually creating the space for other people to come on board and see that it's viable. And that's the thing that's missing, is the viableness of the action, is the viableness of the next steps, because we're kind of stuck in that BAU cycle, you know?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Sid.
And just the last comment, I hope you're encouraging your friends who are 18 not to only vote, but maybe stand for local boards, council, other places.
Yeah, please see Councillor Hills later. Councillor Darby.
Thanks. Thank you to you all. I really acknowledge you taking to the streets. My generation took to the streets to protest the Vietnam Wars and apartheid, and you're taking to the streets to, on this war with climate change. So I take my hat off to you, and it's great to see your generations rising up. Please rise even further. So, look, I'm just wondering, I don't know whether you've looked at our order paper. We're dealing with a climate framework plan, it's now called, before we actually declare the emergency. My question is, have we got it around the wrong way there? Because I'm thinking we have. One would want to say call to action and then get down to your plan or your framework. So that's my first question. And the other one is, do you have a view on us putting together a magnificent a plan of action or a framework of action? A structure or a plan with actions, and there are numerous actions there. And then there's a subset to my question too. Do you think we should hang around and wait for everything to be costed before we commit to it? Or should we wake up to the fact that there is an enormous cost of inaction, not demonstrating now the way forward, and putting it off to next year or something like that to wait for the costed plan? It's my blunt question to you.
So I'll give you guys the discount. I read the plan for your behalf. So I think, when we did the Zero Carbon Act campaign, we kind of went with the framework approach as well, you know, thinking about policy will come later. And now that I kind of reflect on it personally, and we reflect on it as an organization, we often think about the fact that, great, we've got the framework, but what we desperately need now is tangible steps on how to get there, changing the Public Finances Act to incorporate climate change in it, changing the way the contracting is done. I think that is a active thing to play with. A framework offers you kind of a pathway to focus your efforts on, and actions are really important as well, just focusing on the actions. So yeah, this is something, I guess, for you all to debate and then see through the consultations that come through. We'll obviously be putting up more tangible, focused things in the action plan that we want to see fit. But I agree with your point. It's cart before the horse or horse before the cart. It's difficult to say.
Just go back to my first question. Do we declare a climate emergency and then move into the next topic, or do we do it the other way around?
I can see the point you're making. I think that's our decision. I'm going to move to Councillor Newman.
Thank you. Interesting. Last time Generation Zero were here, I think you're talking about the debate on the subsidies for public transport, the concessions at that point, and I took the point then. But one of the questions and the conundrums that I asked you at the time was, in the world of opportunity, cost and choice, what focus should there be on actually funding and contracting public transport services to outer suburban communities that don't have it? Because there's one thing to offer a subsidy to those who already enjoy services, but what about services to communities that don't have it? And I don't really think at the time you addressed that. So are you able to comment further on that today, or will that be, are you able to give some feedback in your input into the framework? Yeah. Can you comment?
Beyond the question of opportunity cost to communities that don't currently enjoy a frequent service, I think the Generation Zero's research shows that Auckland Transport does a whole lot of choosing when it comes to offering either service frequency or offering coverage. And that's a decision that we frequently have very colourful discussions around Generation Zero meetings, where Auckland Transport rely too heavily on the one as opposed to the other. It's always a bit of a toss-up in terms of how much it benefits communities that are going to be underserved, but as a consequence of the decisions that they're making. It is Generation Zero's view that one should not be privileged over the other, and that as much as is possible, frequency as well as coverage should be prioritised to the best of use and most efficient use of resources that we have. We at Generation Zero believe that efficiency shouldn't become a byword for let's do as little as possible, and that's something that the declaration of a climate emergency would really aid.
Okay. Much more discussion needed, detail, action. So I think today's the much wider framework discussion. I'm going to move the recommendation to thank our team in front of us, and Councillor Darby would like to second. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried, and thank you very much. Hugely appreciated. And I think it's fair to say on behalf of all the elected members, we might not have seen all of the young people here today, but we sure as heck saw them in Queen Street. So thank you.